Well, like a bad penny, I keep turning up, so I hope you're still with me for a little while. At least you know now that I won't be on for longer than 10 minutes, or maybe a little less. And you'll forgive me, because today I'm talking about forgiveness anyway, you know. So the reason I bring that up is that, well, it's something that is very prevalent, is very important in our lives, I suppose. And when we look back on our lives, we find all sorts of things that we would wish we hadn't done, or we'd have done better, or so on. And there's always a thing of taking on burdens of guilt and criticising ourselves. And I think that's true of us all in a way, you know, that we're full of self-criticism, and we often blame ourselves for all sorts of things. And of course, again, this is something that comes up a lot in the material from Shabaka, because it's actually a very central theme in a way in the whole in all the material. And it stems from indeed the original thing I was talking about that earlier, about how we originally separated ourselves from the whole divine essence of what we are, and then we got deeper and deeper into a morass of negativity, I suppose, and this in turn led to all sorts of ways in which we were both cruel to ourselves and to others, and into blaming others and blaming ourselves, and fighting with each other and killing each other, and sending people to be burned at the stakes and so on, getting into all sorts of rigid belief systems, feeling that our way was better than anybody else's way, other people's way, and not alone that, but also that we have to convert them to our ways, and if they're not prepared to convert to our ways, well then they need to be destroyed and or in some way punished for all eternity. So the huge, endless well of negativity that we've built up for ourselves over centuries, over all our evolution. And then, too, we found, of course, that for all of us, if we believe in the whole thing of continuing lives and reincarnation, and that we would have lived lifetimes where we were very cruel to others, and other lifetimes, hopefully, where we were kind. But the more that we would have moved on in consciousness, the more that we would have looked back at our evolution, we would perhaps ignore maybe the kind things that we did, and dwell on the awful things, the awful atrocities, the things that the cruelties that we have inflicted on others, and then there would be an endless blaming on that, and how could we ever make up for it? And this led to then in turn perhaps choosing to live lifetimes where we would punish ourselves for that, and so it became a never-ending cycle, if you like. And somewhere sometime along the line, we need to look back at it all, and perhaps take on board where it all began, that we're continually punishing ourselves and punishing others for that separation that we got into. And there's no way that we can ever make up for it, because it was such a huge thing, such an enormous thing. So eventually we need to come to a stage where we forgive ourselves. that unless we do, the cycle continues. And I find it an interesting thing sometimes in work that I have done in working with groups and doing talks, to say to people, well, would you just think for a minute, if you look at your whole life, was there ever something, just one thing even, that you did out of sheer malice? And usually I think that people that looked at it, that they couldn't find even one thing that they would have done like that. So that in a way, we're not as, as, if I may use the word in inverted commas, bad as we might think, that we can allow ourselves some credit. But in any case, the thing is, and the essence of it, and the essence of the whole message of what I got in the material from Shabbat is that forgiveness starts with ourselves. That if we can't forgive ourselves, if we can't reach that point, we'll never be able to forgive others. Because in that forgiveness of ourselves, we reach that inner strength of what we are. We accept that we can never make up for the enormity of the separation that we impose on ourselves from the divine essence that we were and are, and that in accepting that it's impossible for us to make up for it, that there's nothing left for us to do but to forgive ourselves, and then in that reaching that self-acceptance, that way of being with ourselves, that we find that essentially that in dealing with others that there's nothing to forgive, because we accept them as they are, and there's no judgment, there's no blame, there's no point in blaming anybody else for any situation that we find ourselves in. It's our own doing. Now that can be a hard thing to accept. It can be very convenient to blame something else, to blame a situation, to blame another person, to blame the government, to blame whoever it may be, which would be a common thing at the moment. But essentially, it all comes down to ourselves, that whatever situation we're in, it's our own doing. Now that can be a very liberating thing. It sounds a tough thing, and it sounds unreasonable sometimes to say that, because we can bring up all sorts of reasons why it is somebody else's fault. But if we can accept it, it's very liberating. I promise you, if you feel the liberation of it is absolutely wonderful, but there is nobody else to blame and no situation to blame but ourselves, and then that we can get on with life in a totally different way. And indeed, we can look back on our lives and we can forgive ourselves for things that we're looking at now from a different consciousness, and some things that mightn't have, in the consciousness that we were, they wouldn't have been seemed bad for us at all, but that now as we look at them, they become more horrifying. But to remember, we can't change the past at all. There's no way we can change the past. It's all over and done with. But we can change how we look at it, and indeed we can bring that forgiveness to bear in that looking, and then we can get on with our lives and in a very free way, and the way to be, and obviously it will help us in the whole, in creating harmony and helping harmony in all our relationships and the way we live in the world and the way we deal with each other. So thank you very much indeed again for listening to me. Bye for now.